Hello everyone, thank you for joining me on my channel. In this upload, I will be talking about self-concept, what it is, how we frame it, how we sustain it, and how we activate it. I'm actually amazed at how often I'm asked about this, and so what I want to do here is make things clear. So if you have any questions about what I'm talking about, then do please ask. Now, before I get into the content, please feel free to subscribe if you have not done so already. All of the support is greatly appreciated. And thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Also like and share and so on. And of course, as I've said, if you have any questions about this upload, you're most welcome to submit those questions below. Now, although this upload is mainly about shedding light on the topic of self-concept, I will talk at the end about how you can use the integration method to support you in changing your self-concept. But I don't want you to think of this content as a sort of how-to type thing. What I'm aiming to do here is give you information that you can use in any way you wish. It's about encouraging you, building your confidence, giving you the impetus to personalize these truths for yourself. What I derived when I was studying Neville is that it wasn't that he was giving me a list of tips and tricks per se, but it was about reminding me about the qualities that I was born with and the powers that I was born with, and just really inspiring me and offering guidance on how I could reactivate those powers and use them however I saw fit. And the important thing about that is once we get into the swing of things and really put ourselves in the driving seat, we take over control of our lived experience, and we're going to be able to fulfill our mandated roles more effectively. This doesn't happen as swiftly or as effectively if we become too dependent on what we're getting from someone else. This is really about you recognizing yourself as consciousness, knowing that the information that is swirling around, some of us have the ability to help others understand it more clearly, but it's information you have access to as well. So this is really about swinging the door open on that and really getting into a frame of mind in which, you know what, this is me. Neville, our wonderful brother and example and friend, showed us what he showed us, but now this is about me and what I'm going to do with this information and what I'm going to use it for in the world, in my life, and so on. And this is something we're all capable of doing if we just get into that state of mind. So let's really think about that. That's really what I'm aiming for, how I'm trying to infuse my content going forward. And you can let me know how you feel about that. This is really a joint effort. We're all in it together. We're all helping each other all the time. And I'm thrilled to be able to play my part, to do what I do. And I'm looking forward to gleaning from you as you do your part as well. So let's get back into self-concept. What is it? In a nutshell, self-concept is all of the things you believe to be true about yourself and other people. And that includes what you believe to be true about your physicality, your background, and so on, the circumstances and conditions of your life, your psychology, your reactions, and how that applies to other people as well. The sum total of all of those beliefs as an amalgamated whole form a unified emotional state, and that is your self-concept. And I want you to think about that for a moment. Your self-concept is a collective of beliefs. Now, more than this, these beliefs are experienced by us emotionally. That's another thing that's important to bear in mind. Everything you believe to be true about yourself, everything you believe to be true about other people as a unified whole is the self-concept. And this self-concept, this collective of emotions, of beliefs rather, is experienced by us as emotions. Now, I'm not going into too much detail here because I do that when I speak to people one-on-one, but it does suffice to say that these emotions are, esoterically speaking, what we call self-concept. Okay, so this speaks to the nature of the self-concept relative to concepts in general, wherein a concept in general terms is an idea that takes on physicality in order to become something. The self-concept has to lose its physicality in order to become something. So they differ in that important way. And this is an important distinction because when you're working with self-change on this basis, it becomes much easier to do. Sometimes people are so locked into what they think our permanence is when they think about the physicality of things, that they don't believe a new concept of self is even possible. Neville Goddard says this is often because you're looking at what you want to be through the lens of your present limitations, and you're considering those things you're looking at and wanting to have, be, and do as permanent physical fixtures that can't be changed, but they can be changed. It's very, very important that we understand that change is possible for us, and we get to that point by understanding what the physical world is comprised of, because if we don't believe that something is possible, it simply cannot happen for us. This isn't the same as saying that you need to have faith. This relates to a particular feeling you get relative to something you're trying to achieve. So if the thing you're trying to achieve is something you believe is impossible for you, you're bound to prevent yourself from attaining it, or to prevent yourself from trying to attain it in some way. Going back to Neville, he often said that what we think of as fact is in fact not fact. And so if you can think about your objectified, physicalized reality in this way, life becomes less imposing and intractable to you. If we add to this the fact that it's our self-concept which gives meaning to our objectified, physicalized realities, then the whole experience of life is condensed to something very much within our control. What we call physical facts, as I said already, they're simply what ideas look like to consciousness. And if you accept that, you'll be able to swap them out for any that you prefer and pick and choose and so on. The reason for this is, and some of you have said you want more esoteric stuff, consciousness, when it has an idea, I'll start again. So an idea to consciousness is an immediate physical fact. Things aren't processed in time, in sequence, in the way they are in this realm. To consciousness, an idea is an immediate physical fact. So what we call physical facts in the world, in our lives, are ideas to consciousness. So if you think about the fact that you are consciousness, then the objectified, physicalized reality you exist in is simply a reflection of the ideas you have as consciousness. And when you know that, you can then begin to more easily and fluidly change your physical circumstance, your own physicality, and the physicalized experience you have with other people. If you think about that for a minute, the reason this is possible is because ideas are always under the subjective control of the person holding them. So this was one of the most life-changing things, revelations that I received. As soon as I understood that, I began the process of changing things in my physicalized experience to the things that I wanted to experience instead. Okay, so let's move on to framing. Framing means giving context to a self-concept, and there isn't only one method for doing this, which is why I talk about personalizing this information. In fact, the more personal it is to you, the easier it's going to be to do, rather than trying to apply someone else's technique. Simply put, in order to frame a self-concept, you have to apply it to some circumstance to which it can respond. So let's look at that for a moment. Let's say you wanted to embody greater confidence. You could start that process of becoming more confident by thinking about how and when you would need to exhibit that particular trait. So as I say, I'm not going to share any specific methodology here, but what I'm about to say will definitely be sufficient. Okay, once you've established some scenario in your mind that calls for a display of confidence from you, you then have to believe yourself to be the new confident you. And remember, belief is demonstrated by mental performance. So in other words, you would need to play out the scenario as the confident you, and through that exercise, you're going to evoke the emotion of confidence. That is the belief. And this will be part of your new self-concept. So if you think about what I said earlier on, our beliefs are experienced by us as emotions. Now, we don't need to have some special faith in order to conjure up a scene in our mind in which we play the role of being a more confident person, but the process of doing that will evoke the emotion. That emotion, as experienced by you, is a belief relative to your self-concept. All that happens. It's very, very straightforward. And remember, the more you do it, the better you get at it, the easier it becomes, the more natural, and so on and so forth. If you want to think about how strong your belief is, well, this is measured by the tones of reality that you give to the scene. And this is the kind of thing that Neville talks about all the time. So once you've done this, the next stage is sustaining this new self-concept. And do note that I haven't spoken about lots of different elements to this self-concept. You can be lots of different things. I've just picked on one example. You go through this process over and over again, substituting confidence for whatever you want: greater love, more generosity of spirit, more creativity, I don't know what it is, greater popularity, whatever it is you want to exhibit. Use the same process over and over again. You construct this scenario in which you are performing as that person, and as you evoke the emotion through that mental process, you are forming a new self-concept. So metaphysically, to sustain this, then, we do this by getting comfortable with it, which we do, as I say, by repeatedly evoking the emotion. Now, the more and more you do this, the more familiar it becomes to you, and that is where sustaining the self-concept comes in. And as I say, that really is all there is to it. I think sometimes we're thwarted by how simple these processes are, and it's not because, and they're simple not because they're not effective. They're simple because this is about who we already are. We're just being reminded through this process to tap into this part of our nature, ourselves. Okay, so as I say, you go over that concept, you bring your attention to rest on what you feel while you're thinking about this version of you and you're performing whatever task it is, and you repeat this until you feel comfortable, or to use Neville's words, until it feels natural to you. The aim here, as far as I'm concerned, is to get to a point where there's absolutely no awkwardness when you consider yourself as being or doing whatever it is. Ultimately, the way you feel about your new concept should be indistinguishable from the way you feel about yourself now, not in terms of whether you are satisfied with yourself or not, but in terms of how familiar it feels. I should point out that changing your self-concept should be regarded by you as being the easiest thing in the world to accomplish, because you know yourself and you are the one deciding what happens to you psychologically. Remember, all of this that we're doing, this thing we call life, is a movement of mind. Shifts in state, self-concept, circumstances, conditions, these are all adjustments of mind. This is something that Neville Goddard talks about frequently. It's all about what we are doing psychologically, where we exist in our psyche. That's what this whole thing we call life is about, no matter how tangibly real it feels to us. This is all about what happens to you psychologically. It may appear that someone on the outside, external to you, has control over what you're doing, has control over your life in some way, but no one can manage or stage manage your thoughts, your mind. No one has access to your mind. And so just think about that for a moment. If something you wish to express is greater autonomy over your own lived experience, you can use this exact same principle to do that. No one has access to your mind. It is the great equalizer. And this means that anybody can exist, do, be, have anything in the world, regardless of what limitations they're subjected to when they are born into the world. This is the thing that makes life just. We all possess the same mental resource. Even people who are mentally ill or compromised in some way, we all possess the same resources, the same psychological resources, and because of that, we can be, do, or have anything. The purposes of our the purpose of our experiences are to teach us to activate different parts about ourselves depending on where we are in our journey. That's not for this upload, but I just want you to think about that. This is a psychological experience we're all having. So moving on then, the fastest way to express a new self-concept is to activate it generatively using Neville's patented breathing technique. And I will put a link to the clip in which Neville describes the technique. It's a short clip here on YouTube in his own wonderful voice, and you can listen to that at some private moment and get a sense of what I'm talking about. But that's what's going to happen at the end of the process. It is the psychological equivalent of sexual arousal and climax. And if you haven't experienced the physical version of arousal and climax in a while, or you're uncomfortable with it for any reason, remember, this is a very private activity. No one can see you, no one can judge you, no one can stop you. If it helps, if you're a little bit uneasy with this kind of thing, think of what I'm describing as becoming so intensely excited about being what you desire to be, that the thought, the prolonged thought of that literally makes you tremble. If you think about when you see a kid, a child on Christmas Day or on their birthday or something, when a child gets something they're really happy about, they kind of scrunch up and they squeal, you know, that kind of excitement. This is the kind of thing we're talking about, and you can reach that requisite level of excitement and subsequent activation by repeating this process over and over again. People who are much more relaxed about it just go straight for that explosion, as Neville calls it, that climatic point at which you know a bond has been formed between this new concept and your human aspect. As we know from science, when a bond is formed, energy is released. And so it's a powerful bond that's formed, and that is demonstrated by the surge of energy that leaves you when you reach that point of unification. I mentioned before the integration technique, and I will put a link to that video in the description box as well. And so you know there are a series of statements that you make to really lock in with your higher aspect, or to really defer control to your higher aspect so that it can operate your human aspect as itself. Once you've made those statements, show me what you see and so on, what you're going to do at that point is start to play out the scenario in which you are expressing this new concept of self. Hold it in mind. You're going to take a deep breath while the image is being played out and smile. And after a few moments of being in this picture in which you're performing as this new concept of self, you're going to add, transmit the emotion of this self-concept to me. Okay, so that is transmit the emotion of this self-concept to me. And then as usual, you end with thank you, thank you, thank you. Now what I'll do is I'll see how people get on with that and go with some feedback, and it may be that I put together a specific technique exercise that you can do, but I'm going to wait to see how people get on with what I've said in this video first before uploading that. I don't just want to rush ahead to that. I want to make sure that we really are comfortable with the information we've heard here today, and in this upload rather, and that you've used it, you've had the confidence and the courage to use it. And then if you feel, no, let's go with a more specific exercise, I'm happy to do that, but I'll let feedback dictate whether I do that or not. So you're going to ask your higher aspect to transmit the emotion of this new self-concept to you so that you can start feeling the emotion of it straight away. Once this emotion becomes your overriding emotion, when you think about yourself, this is going to be your new expression of self. So here we are. This is what self-concept is all about. This is how easy it is to change it, how easy it is to frame it and to sustain it and to activate it. Thank you very, very much for listening to this upload. As I say, please submit your questions below, 1 or 2 sentences at most. And I look forward greatly to being with you in the next upload.